My name is Ren Alcott. I'm 28 years old. And on a Tuesday morning in October, a man in a company truck pulled into my driveway, knocked on my door, and handed me a business card that changed the shape of everything I thought I knew about the 12 acres my grandfather had left me 7 years ago. His name was Carl Briggs. He worked for a company called Meridian Energy Partners. He was polite and businesslike, and he said he had been trying to reach me for 3 weeks through the county records office and was glad he had finally found the right address. He said Meridian Energy Partners had been conducting geological surveys in the county and had identified a significant natural gas deposit underlying several parcels in the area. One of those parcels was mine. He said the company was prepared to offer a lease agreement for extraction rights. He said the upfront payment would be $340,000. He said there would be royalties on top of that, ongoing, for the duration of the extraction. He said he could leave the preliminary offer documents if I wanted time to review them before deciding anything. I said yes. He left the documents and drove away in his company truck, and I stood in my doorway, holding a folder, and looking out at the October morning and thinking about every family gathering for the past 7 years where my father had called my 12 acres the consolation prize. Before I tell you what happened when my family found out, drop your city and the time where you are right now. I want to know where this story finds you. Now let me take you back 7 years to the reading of my grandfather's will, and the afternoon I became the owner of 12 acres of scrubby rural land that nobody in my family thought was worth the paper the deed was printed on. My grandfather, Earl Alcott, bought the land in Harmon County in 1987 for $4,200. He told me this once, when I was maybe 14, during one of the long drives we sometimes took together on Sunday afternoons, when he would just pick a direction and see where the roads went. He said he had bought it because the price was right and the land was there, and he had a feeling about it, the way he sometimes had feelings about things that turned out to be correct and sometimes had feelings about things that turned out to be the $4,200 kind of mistake. He laughed when he said that. He had a laugh that started in his chest and arrived late, like it had taken its time getting there. I loved that laugh. Earl Alcott was not a wealthy man. He had worked in manufacturing management for 30 years and saved carefully and made a few investments that had done reasonably well and owned a house in a good neighborhood that had appreciated over time. By the standards of what my family later decided his estate was worth, he was comfortable. Not extraordinary, comfortable. He had 3 children. My father, Dennis, was the oldest. My Aunt Carol was the middle. My Uncle Pete was the youngest. He had 5 grandchildren, across the 3 of them. Me, my sister Brooke, my brother Ryan from my father's side, 2 cousins from Pete's side, who I barely knew. My grandmother had died 8 years before my grandfather, and in the years after her death, he had become, in the way of people who have loved one person for a very long time, and find the world smaller without them, quieter and more internal. He still drove on Sunday afternoons. He still had opinions about things, but there was a quality of conservation to him, like someone who has decided to spend what remains of himself carefully. He died in the spring when I was 21, peacefully in the house where he had lived for 30 years in the way that is the best version of how these things go. The reading of the will was on a Thursday afternoon in May. My grandfather had been specific. That was the word Bernard Alcott, no relation, just our family's longtime attorney, used when he began, specific. He said my grandfather had updated the will twice in the 5 years before his death and had been very deliberate about the distribution. The house went to my Uncle Pete, who had been living closest and helping most with my grandfather's care in the final years. That was fair. Nobody argued with it. The investment portfolio, which had grown to somewhere in the range of $280,000, was divided between my father and my Aunt Carol in equal shares, roughly $140,000 each. Also fair, also unargued. The beach house in Carteret County, the one where we had spent summer weeks when I was a child, the one with the porch that faced the water and the particular smell of salt and old wood that I still sometimes catch in dreams, went to my sister Brooke. Brooke was 24 at the time. She was my grandfather's oldest grandchild on our side, and had always been closer to him than Ryan or I were, or at least had always been more present in the way that gets noticed and remembered. She was also, and I do not say this with bitterness because bitterness is expensive and I have learned to spend carefully, the family's golden grandchild in the way that golden children exist in most families, the one who drew the warmth of the room, whose achievements were referenced most often, whose choices were supported most readily. She got the beach house. Ryan got a cash bequest of $45,000, designated specifically for the graduate program he had been accepted into, and that the family knew he couldn't fully fund on his own. The two cousins from Pete's side received smaller cash bequests in amounts I don't remember precisely, and I received 12 acres of land in Harmon County. Bernard, the attorney, read the parcel description and the county recording information and the deed number, and when he finished, the room was quiet for a moment in the way rooms are quiet when something unexpected has been said, and everyone is deciding how to respond. My grandfather had left a note with the bequest, a single handwritten paragraph, which Bernard read aloud. He wrote, "Wren has always understood that value is not always visible on the surface. I am leaving her the Harmon County land because she is the only one of my grandchildren who asked me about it more than once and actually listened to the answer. I believe it will serve her well. I believe she will be patient with it." Bernard folded the note and set it on the table. My father picked up the parcel description and looked at it for a moment. Then he said, "This is 12 acres in Harmon County." Bernard confirmed it. "Harmon County," my father said again, with the tone of someone repeating words to make sure they've understood something correctly. "The land he bought in 1987. "Yes." My father set the paper down. He didn't say anything else in the room, but I saw the expression that crossed his face, brief and unguarded, the expression of a man who has assessed something and found it wanting. Not angry, dismissive, the particular dismissal of someone who has decided a thing is not worth the effort of an opinion. That expression was the opening note of 7 years of the same song. The consolation prize comment came first from my father, 6 weeks after the reading, at a family dinner at my Aunt Carol's house. Someone, I don't remember who, mentioned the estate, the way it had been divided, how everyone was settling into what they had received. Brooke talked about her plans for the beach house, renovations she was considering, whether she would rent it out in the off-season. Ryan talked about his program, the funding, how the cash bequest had made the difference. When the conversation reached me, my father said, before I could speak, with the ease of someone saying something they have already decided is a joke, "Wren got the consolation prize." He laughed, not meanly, not with any visible intention to wound. The way people laugh at a thing they have decided is small. A few people at the table smiled. My Aunt Carol looked slightly uncomfortable and moved the conversation along. I said nothing. I had learned, by 21, that responding to my father's dismissals gave them more weight than ignoring them, that the best thing to do with a sentence like that was to let it pass through you like a wind and give it nothing to catch on. I let it pass. But it caught anyway, the way things do when you pretend they don't. The consolation prize became the phrase over the years that followed, not always said directly. Sometimes it was a look when someone mentioned my name in the context of what my grandfather had left us. Sometimes it was the way the beach house came up at every gathering and my 12 acres never did, which is its own kind of erasure. Sometimes it was my father saying, when I mentioned the land, that I should probably just sell it and be done with it, that there was no point holding on to scrubby acreage in a county with no economic activity. No economic activity. Scrubby acreage. The consolation prize. 7 years of this. And me, holding the deed, paying the property taxes every year out of my own pocket, refusing to sell, not entirely sure why I was refusing, except that my grandfather had said I would be patient with it, and I had decided to be patient with it, and that somewhere underneath the dismissal was the memory of a Sunday afternoon drive and his voice saying he'd had a feeling about it. I held on to the feeling. I want to tell you what those 7 years looked like. Not just the land, but the rest of it. because the land is part of a larger story about what it meant to be me and my family, and what my grandfather understood about that when he made his decision. Brooke was the one who got things, not just from my grandfather, from my parents, from attention, from the particular current of family warmth that runs toward some people, and away from others in ways nobody openly acknowledges, but everyone can feel. She got the better bedroom growing up. She got the car at 16 without asking. She got 2 semesters of college paid for. And then when she decided college wasn't for her, she got the startup money for a small online business that did well enough and that everyone discussed with pride at family gatherings. She got the beach house. I got good grades and a scholarship to a state school, and a work-study job in the financial aid office, and a degree in environmental science that my father once described at a Thanksgiving dinner as a major in unemployment. He said it as a joke. I knew it was a joke. It still sat in my chest for 3 days. After college, I worked for a small environmental consulting firm that did land assessment and remediation work. The pay was not extraordinary, but the work was interesting to me in the specific way of work that uses what you actually know. I rented an apartment 40 minutes from my hometown, drove a car that was paid off, saved carefully, and visited my family for the obligatory holidays and the occasional Sunday dinner. At every gathering, at some point, someone mentioned the beach house, Brooke's renovation plans, the rental income she was generating, the weekends people had spent there as guests. At no gathering in 7 years did anyone mention my 12 acres, except in the context of the consolation prize joke, or the suggestion that I should sell it. My mother, to her credit, never said it directly. She occupied the uncomfortable middle ground of someone who saw both of her children clearly and could not find a way to address the imbalance without confronting my father, which she had decided was not a battle worth having. She expressed her awareness of the situation through small gestures, an extra call, a pointed compliment on something I had done, the particular careful attention of someone trying to compensate for something they are not willing to name. I appreciated the gestures. They were not enough, but I appreciated them. Ryan was not part of the dismissal. He was younger and less caught in the family dynamics, and he had always treated me as an equal in the straightforward way of siblings who have not learned yet to sort each other by rank. He called sometimes just to talk. He came to my apartment for dinner occasionally. He was a good brother in the ways that mattered. The land sat in Harmon County, 12 acres of it, overgrown and silent, and visited by me exactly twice in 7 years. Once the summer after the reading, when I drove out to see what I had. Once 3 years later, when the property tax bill arrived, and I wanted to make sure there was nothing on it that needed attention. Both times I stood at the edge of it and felt the weight of my grandfather's note. She is the only one who asked me about it, more than once, and actually listened to the answer. I had asked him what was out there. He had said, rocks and earth and time, and the possibility of what's underneath. I had been 14. I had thought he was being poetic. I need to stop here for a moment, because I want to tell you something about patience. Not the performed patience of someone gritting their teeth through a thing they are waiting to be over, but the real kind, the kind that believes in something without being able to explain why, and holds it anyway. My grandfather believed there was something underneath that land. I don't know if he knew specifically. I don't know if the feeling he described was geological or intuitive, or just the particular stubbornness of a man who had paid $4,200 for something and refused to decide it was worthless. What I know is that he chose me to hold it, not because I was his favorite, because he thought I was the one who could be patient with it. Has someone ever believed in you when nobody else did, when the thing they believed in you for seemed to everyone else like nothing? Tell me in the comments. I want to hear it. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do that now. Because what happened when Carl Briggs drove away in his company truck, and I opened that folder, is where this story becomes something none of my family expected. I did not call anyone immediately. That surprises people when I tell them. The instinct, I think, is to imagine that the moment Carl Briggs handed me the folder and said $340,000 up front, I reached for my phone and called my father. That there was a scene, a confrontation, a version of the consolation prize line thrown back in someone's face. That is not what happened. What happened is I closed my front door and sat down at my kitchen table and opened the folder and read every page of the preliminary offer documents, carefully, slowly, in the way I read things when they matter. Then I called my colleague Marcus Holt, who had been working in land and mineral rights assessment for 6 years, and who I had met through work 3 years earlier, and who was the first person I thought of when I needed someone who understood what I was looking at. He came over that evening. He read the documents. He asked me questions about the parcel, the county, what I knew about the geology of the area. He looked things up on his laptop. He was quiet for a while after that, in the way of someone thinking precisely. Then he said, "Wren, this is a legitimate offer. I know Meridian. They don't knock on doors without having done the work first. Is $340,000 fair?" He looked at the documents again. "It's the opening offer, which means it's not the final offer." I looked at him. "You need a mineral rights attorney," he said. "Before you respond to anything, before you call anyone, a specialist, not a general practice attorney. How long will that take?" "To find one? A few days. To have a real conversation about the offer and what you can negotiate? A few weeks." "Okay," I said. "Wren?" He looked at me. "Do you understand what this could be?" "Tell me." He told me. Not in numbers yet, because the numbers depended on the size of the deposit and the terms of the lease and the royalty structure and things that would take time to assess, but in scope, in what mineral rights on a parcel this size, over a significant natural gas deposit, could mean over the life of an extraction lease. I sat with that for a long time after he left. I did not call my father that night. I did not call anyone in my family. I called a mineral rights attorney named Diane Forsyth, whose name Marcus had given me, left a message, and went to bed. I slept better than I had expected to. Diane Forsyth called me back the next morning, and we had an initial conversation that lasted 40 minutes and confirmed everything Marcus had said and added several things he hadn't. She had dealt with Meridian Energy Partners before. She knew their standard offer structure and what the negotiating room typically looked like, and what a fair lease agreement for a parcel this size should contain. She said the $340,000 was a starting point. She said with the right representation and the right leverage, she believed we could do significantly better. I asked how significantly. She said, "Let me review the preliminary documents and talk to you again at the end of the week." She called me Friday afternoon. She said, "The deposit is larger than their initial survey indicated. I've had a geologist colleague look at the county data. We're looking at a meaningful reserve. The upfront number should be higher. The royalty structure needs work, and there are environmental protections we need in the lease that they haven't included in the preliminary." "What are we talking about for the upfront?" I asked. "I want to negotiate toward $480,000, she said. "I think we can get there. And the royalties over a 20-year extraction lease could be substantial. I don't want to give you a number until we're further into the negotiation, but I want you to understand, this is not a small thing." I sat at my kitchen table and looked out the window at the October afternoon. "How long will the negotiation take?" I asked. 4 to 6 weeks for the initials." "Terms," she said. "The full lease could take 3 to 4 months." "Okay," I said. "Let's proceed." "One more thing," she said. "Do you have any family members with claims on this land? Joint ownership, inheritance complications, anything like that?" "No," I said. "It's mine outright. The deed is in my name alone. Has been since my grandfather's estate was settled 7 years ago." "Good," she said. "Keep it simple. Don't discuss this with anyone who doesn't need to know until the lease is signed." I thought about that. "Anyone?" I asked. "Anyone," she said. "These things have a way of getting complicated when family is involved. Let the ink dry first." I thought about my father's voice saying consolation prize. "Understood," I said. I kept the negotiation quiet for 11 weeks. This was the hardest part, not because I wanted to tell people. I had learned, over 7 years of being the one whose things were not discussed at family dinners, to be comfortable with information that was mine alone. But because the family gatherings continued during those 11 weeks, and at those gatherings the beach house came up, and the investment portfolio came up, and Brooke's rental income came up, and I sat with the folder in my apartment and the negotiation in progress and said nothing. There was one dinner in November, my parents' house, a Sunday, 9 people around the table. My father was in a good mood, the particular expansive mood he got when he felt the shape of things was correct. He talked about Brooke's rental season, which had gone well. He talked about the investment portfolio, which had had a good year. He mentioned Ryan's program, which Ryan was excelling in. At some point, he looked at me with the expression he used when he was being generous, the expression that wanted credit for the generosity. "You doing okay with the land thing?" he asked. "Any thoughts on selling?" Brooke smiled, the smile of someone who has heard this conversation before. "I'm still thinking about it," I said. "It's been 7 years," he said, not unkindly, just with the tone of someone who has decided a thing is not worth holding and cannot understand why anyone would keep holding it. "I know," I said. "The market's not going to improve out there," he said. "Harmon County hasn't had development interest in 20 years. You'd be lucky to get what Grandpa paid for it." What Grandpa paid for it? $4,200. I looked at my plate. "I'll keep that in mind," I said. Brooke changed the subject, and the dinner moved on, and I sat with 11 weeks of negotiation in my chest and said nothing. That dinner was the last one before the lease was signed. Diane Forsyth called me on a Wednesday morning in December. "We have a deal," she said. Her voice had the particular satisfaction of someone who has done what they said they could do. The upfront payment was $467,000, not the $480,000 she had aimed for, but within the range she had projected and significantly more than the original $340,000. The royalty structure was favorable, 4% of gross revenue from extraction, paid quarterly, for the duration of the lease, which was set at 22 years. The environmental protections she had insisted on were in the document. She said, "Wren, this is a very good outcome." I sat at my kitchen table with the phone against my ear and the morning light coming through the window, and I felt something I do not have a precise word for. Not triumph, not vindication. Something closer to the feeling of a very long patience being met with something real. "Thank you," I said. "The signing is Friday," she said. "After that, it's public record. Anyone who wants to look it up can." "I know," I said. "Is there anyone you want to tell before it becomes public?" I thought about it. "My brother," I said, "and my mother." "Anyone else?" "Not before Friday," I said. She understood without my having to explain. I called Ryan on Thursday evening. He answered immediately, the way he always did, with the uncomplicated warmth of someone who is always genuinely glad to hear from you. "Hey," he said. "What's up?" "I need to tell you something before it becomes public tomorrow," I said. A pause. "Okay." "The land in Harmon County." "Grandpa's land?" "Yes," I told him. Not everything at once, but in order. The energy company, Carl Briggs in the driveway, the 11 weeks of negotiation, Diane Forsyth, the lease, the upfront payment, the royalties. He was quiet for a long moment. "Wren," he said. "Yeah, $467,000, plus royalties, for 22 years. Another silence, then quietly, genuinely, "Grandpa knew." "I think so," I said. "He knew, and he gave it to you." "He gave it to the one who asked about it," I said, and listened to the answer. Ryan laughed, but not a dismissive laugh, the kind that has something real underneath it. "I remember you asking him about that land. I thought you were just making conversation." "So did I said, "for a while." "Are you going to tell Dad?" "Tomorrow," I said, "after the signing." "He's going to—" Ryan stopped. "I don't know what he's going to do." "Neither do I said. "But I wanted you to know first, and I wanted to say that you've been a good brother through all of it. You've never done the consolation prize thing, and I've never said thank you for that." He was quiet for a moment. "Of course not," he said. "It was never funny." "No," I said, "it wasn't." We talked for a while longer about normal things, the way we did, and said good night, and I sat in the quiet of my apartment and felt the weight of the next day settling around me. I called my mother the next morning before the signing. She answered with the slightly careful quality she always had when I called unexpectedly, the quality of someone who is paying full attention from the first word. I told her. She was silent for a very long time. Then she said, in a voice I had not heard from her before, something between overwhelmed and heartbroken and proud. "Oh, Wren." "I'm signing the lease in 2 hours," I said. "I wanted you to know before it was public." "Your grandfather," she said. And then she stopped, because there was apparently nothing she could add to that sentence that would be adequate. "I know," I said. "Does your father know?" "Not yet." A pause. "He's going to feel terrible." "I know." "Are you—" She stopped again. "Are you okay?" It was the right question, the question she had been better at asking in recent years than she used to be. "I'm good, Mom," I said. "I'm really good." She cried a little after that, quietly, the kind of crying that is more gratitude than grief. I let her. When we hung up, I put on my coat and drove to Diane Forsyth's office and signed the lease. My father called that evening at 6:14 p.m. I know the time because I looked at my phone when it lit up and noted it the way you note the time of something you have been expecting. He had found out through the county records, which had been updated that afternoon. Diane had told me this would happen quickly. Mineral rights leases are public record, and people who watch that kind of thing notice. Someone had noticed and called my father. I answered. "Wren." His voice had a quality I had not heard from him before. Not the expansive mood of Sunday dinners, and not the managed dismissal of consolation prize comments. Something stripped of both of those things. Something that was just him without the management. I heard. "Yes," I said. "The land." "Yes." A pause. Long enough that I thought he might not continue. $467,000, he said, plus royalties. Another pause. "I called it the consolation prize," he said. "You did. For 7 years. Yes. I let the silence do what silence does when the words have already been said, and all that's left is what they mean." "Your grandfather knew," my father said finally, not a question. "I think he had a feeling," I said. "He told me that once, that he had a feeling about it." "He gave it to you because you asked about it." "He gave it to me because he thought I would be patient with it." My father was quiet for a long moment. "I'm sorry, Wren," he said, "for the consolation prize, for all of it." I sat with that. It was not everything. An apology for 7 years of dismissal, delivered on the day the dismissal had been definitively answered by $467,000 and a 22-year royalty stream, was not the same as an apology that had arrived 7 years ago and cost him something. But it was real. I could hear that it was real. "Thank you," I said. "What are you going to do with it?" he asked. Not the money, not the lease. What are you going to do? As if the question was about something larger than both. "I'm going to be patient with it," I said, the way Grandpa asked me to. He didn't say anything to that. We said goodbye, and I set my phone down and stood at my kitchen window and looked out at the December evening, the street dark and cold and quiet below. It has been 4 months since the signing. The first royalty payment arrived in March. Smaller than the upfront number, but consistent and real, the kind of thing that changes the shape of planning when you know it is coming every quarter for 22 years. My family has recalibrated in the way families recalibrate when something unexpected reorganizes the power dynamic. Brooke called me in January, the first time she had called me without a specific reason in longer than I could easily remember. The conversation was slightly awkward and genuine at the same time. The conversation of someone who is trying to find a new footing and is doing it honestly rather than strategically. I respected that. My father and I have spoken 4 times since the December call. Not about the land, mostly, about other things. Carefully, as if we are both aware that we are in the early stages of building something that can only be built slowly. He has not made a dismissive comment about anything I have said or done in those 4 conversations. I notice this. I do not comment on it. I just notice. My mother came to visit in February. We cooked dinner together and walked around my neighborhood in the cold and talked about things we had not talked about before. and things we had talked about 100 times. She said at one point, standing at a corner, waiting for the light to change, "He knew what he was doing, your grandfather. He always knew." "I think so," I said. "He saw you," she said, "when other people weren't looking." I thought about Sunday afternoon drives and a laugh that started in the chest and arrived late, and a voice saying rocks and earth and time and the possibility of what's underneath. "He did," I said. The light changed and we walked. I want to tell you something about my grandfather's note. She is the only one who asked me about it, more than once, and actually listened to the answer. I have thought about that sentence a great deal in the past 4 months, about what it meant that asking and listening were the criteria. Not achievement, not presence, not the performance of closeness that Brooke had always been better at than me. Just asking and listening. My grandfather was a man who believed that what was underneath things mattered more than what was visible on the surface. He said it about the land. I think he believed it about people too. He saw something in me that he decided was worth leaving something to. Not the spectacular thing, not the obvious thing, but the thing that required patience to understand. He was right that I would be patient with it. Not because I am unusually patient by nature, I am not, but because he asked me to be, and I had decided, in the way you decide things when someone you love asks them of you, that I would honor it. The $467,000 is real, and the royalties are real, and the 22-year lease is real. All of it is real. But the thing I think about most, in the mornings before the day starts, is not the money. It is a Sunday afternoon drive, on a road with no name yet, a man with a laugh that started in his chest, and 2 sentences I didn't fully understand until a company truck pulled into my driveway 28 years later. He had a feeling about it. He was right. If someone has ever believed in something about you that nobody else could see yet, I want to hear about it. Tell me in the comments what they saw and whether they were right. And if this story found you when you needed it, share it with someone who is holding something that people keep calling worthless. Sometimes the value is just underneath. You just have to be patient with it. I'll see you next time.